First thing I'm going to do is get that screw out of there. I know that the crack, I can see the crack, so I'm lining the drill up. Then I'm going to want any of the metal here that might have glue on it. More is better. It's like a screw, because then the glue's trying to, it'll enter those threads. And if the right side of the stock's trying to leave the left side, it's got to pull the glue out of those teeth or those threads.
Hi, and welcome to Over the Gunsmith's Shoulder. I'm Gene Kelly, president of the American Gunsmithing Institute. And in this segment, Master Gunsmith Ken Brooks is going to walk you step by step through a gunsmithing repair. You're going to learn a lot. And if you'd like to learn to be a certified professional gunsmith, then go to AmericanGunsmithingInstitute.com and request an information package. Now let's learn from Ken.
All right, well, you spies are back over my shoulder. So today we're going to do a little bit of stock repair. So I have an old beat up Winchester 94 that's got some stock cracks and some other things going on with it, and then kind of a bonus, another stock that I'm working on. So before we get going, I want to tell you a little bit about this. I'm going to show how the repair is done. We're going to do the repair, but then we got to let the glue set up. So you guys probably aren't going to see the finished product, and we're not hiding anything from you. It's just that we're filming, we're gluing, then it's going to be tomorrow when I'm tearing stuff apart and starting to fool around with stuff, and we're just not going to be able to film that part of it. But the actual setting up, getting things ready to go, how the work is done, which is what you guys want anyhow, is where we're going. So we don't want you thinking, well, hey, they didn't show us clean up the dried glue. No, we're not going to show you cleaning up the dried glue. All right, so what I've got is a Winchester 94 that has some cracks. We got a couple minor cracks right here at the back of the tang. There's, maybe it's not that side, there it is. One right there, got another one right here. So we're going to be pulling this apart and taking a crack at those. So you also see that we got a nut where the tang screw comes through. Yeah, that's one of their complaints too. We don't like that. Yeah, neither do I. So they want that replaced with an original. So first thing I'm going to do is get that screw out of there. And you guys will see these from time to time. The nut and the screw through the tangs, holding things together. If it's rusted in place, put a wrench on it. You guys know how to do most of that. All beat up. What's nice is that comes out, we didn't modify the stock. What I really hate to see is when they've glued a nut in the side here, drilled a hole and put a bolt through there. I don't like that. That looks bad, it's crappy. All right, so we have our old nut and bolt, and I already grabbed a new one. So I'm going to pull the stock off, and I'm going to double check just to make sure that the new screw will screw in, that the threads aren't mangled in that lower tang. We go down flush, all well and good. So that guy screws in, good. So we have the screws already taken care of. I'm going to slide the stock back on now. Make sure that the screw goes through. Make sure the screw goes through the hole in the stock. Trying to keep this where you guys can see it and where I can see it and where I'm not scratching anything up. That screws down tight. We're flush here. Looks like it's supposed to. All well and good. So now we're going to move on to fixing those stock cracks. They actually want the stock bedded as well, and I'm going to do some of that, but not a ton of it. So, all right, so what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? We got these cracks. I'll focus on these at first. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a drill, and I've already taken some measurements. You guys don't need to be watching me gather up the tooling for this. So ahead of time, we kind of get some tooling going. I'm using a toothpick. We'll go over material here in just a minute. So there's a toothpick. There's a drill that's the right size. And we're going to drill down the crack from here. We're going to mix up some glue, shove it in there. Then we're going to use the toothpick to shove it in, which will, we've always used the term hydraulic, or force the glue throughout the crack. Forces it through that crack so you get glue all the way through. We'll bolt it together, wrap some things around it. You'll see. I'm just giving you kind of a rundown of where we're at and what we're going to do. Same thing for these minor cracks right here. And these usually come about because this is the part of the stock that's taking the recoil when the gun goes off. We want this area up here to touch the receiver and take the recoil. Back here, those tangs act like a splitting wedge and they'll start to crack. Here, I don't know about the bottom. Bottom looks pretty good. So I will drill down those cracks. Now, let's talk about what I'm going to use. I'm using a toothpick because I have toothpicks. If you've got little teeny dowels or whatever, that's fine. You can use the brass ones, and that's okay. It's very good. I prefer those where a lot of strength is required. For these, we don't need a lot of strength. We're just trying to force that glue through those cracks. So wood works really well. I also like how I can blunt. I usually chew it off because I'm chewing on one of them, but you blunt off one end. Now it's fairly blunt. When I drive that down in, it's going to push the glue in and, again, hydraulic it through the crack. And most of the time, a piece of the toothpick or dowel will be sticking up. I can pull it back a little bit, clip off the extra, then drive it in with a punch. It's below flush, all well and good. Whereas if you're using brass, you drive it in, that's fine. If it's sticking out, you can pull it back, cut it off with a cutoff disc. It's just a lot more work. Back to what I'm using. So the brass ones work, not opposed to that. And I have some, but I usually use that for when a stock needs a lot of repair. You're going to glue up through a pistol grip, something like that. If you've got the Q-tips with the wooden handles, those rock because you've got the Q-tip, which you're using it, awesome. Usually they're long. I actually have one or two. There we go. This one you can see is dirty. I kind of save these for special things when I can reach down in to get something. But wooden handles, awesome. Great stuff for this exact thing. But again, round toothpicks work just as well. If you've got a big hole that you're going to do, Chinese chopsticks that you get at the Chinese restaurant, yeah, I got some of those too. So if I've got to use a bigger hole for whatever reason, I can use that. So the process is the same. Okay, so I have a toothpick, I got the drill. What am I going to use for glue? For glue, I'm going to use 24-hour 2-ton epoxy. I'm not advocating this brand over any others, just I've used the Loctite brand, I've used this kind, whatever. But the 24-hour 2-ton stuff, I don't use 5-minute epoxy. It starts to dry almost immediately, and I don't care for that. And I also found, for me personally, that it's not as strong as I would like. The 24-hour 2-ton stuff is good stuff. Holds up, gluing the stocks back together. It's what I use. If you like something else, by all means use it. I'm just telling you what I use. So, all right. So I'm going to use this drill in the Foredom. I do it by hand and by eye. I don't put it in a drill press or a hand drill. I just use it in the Foredom. And so we're going to jockey the cameras a little bit. Let me get set up to do that. We'll come right back and show you. Okay, so we've got these 3 little cracks here, which I already talked about. I'm just reiterating some things, and I've noticed a couple other things. So I got a crack here and a crack here. And if you'll note, when I pull this crack apart, and see we're cracked up through here. Not too bad. This other one, cracks clear back almost the whole way. Try to keep my head out of the way so the camera can see here. I turn this over and, oh my word, looky here. So this right panel, it's pretty severely compromised. I mean, not enough. When they're broke completely off, they're super severe. And we fix those. But again, just giving you kind of a heads up of where we're at and what we're doing. So I got my drill in the Foredom. The longer the better, so you can get the longer the drill, so you can get full depth, but you don't want a drill that's so large in diameter that the toothpick falls in and falls out. So you've got to have some resistance. So what I'm going to do is go in like so for this first crack. You don't want to drill out the side of the stock. That looks bad. Now this one's got all kinds of patches and crap in it, but nonetheless, we don't want to drill through the side of the stock. Now that I've said that, I probably will. You know how no good deed goes unpunished. So here we go, and I do it by eye. I know that the crack, I can see the crack, so I'm lining the drill up. So there's 1, 2. Actually, if I can go a little deeper on that one. And some of them you won't be able to go very deep just because you won't be able to reach it for whatever reason. All right. Now, the other one is that I want to do specifically, just taking my glass off so I can see up close, is this one right here. See that? What's nice is that it's already tight together. When you've got a crack that's separated and it stays apart, you need to clamp it together when you drill your hole, because if it's apart and you drill it, you're not really cutting out much material. So it needs to be in the clamped together, finished position when you drill that hole. Then you can take your rubber band or your bungee cord or whatever you're using to clamp it off. It'll spring apart. You can get glue in there real easy that way, but then you're going to want to clamp that back together with that bungee cord when you force that dowel down in there. This one is tight, so I don't have to worry about as much. I just need to make sure that I drill where the crack is. So our crack is here. On the outside I can see it. Comes across and then drops down just a little and over here. So sometimes the crack looks here on the side and then it'll be angled. So if I was to drill here, I'd miss it if the crack's angled down this direction. So I want to make sure that I can see that crack where it's at. It started right there. And then I don't want to drill like this because then I'm going to drill into where it's machined out for the lower tang and trigger assembly. So that needs to stay straight. I also don't want to drill out and come out the side of the stock here. So it's one of those, I'm going to have to drill holding it this way, turn a little bit to make sure, and see I'm actually going down a little bit. Well, maybe you can't see it. I can. So I'm going to change that a little bit and drill more of an angle that matches the crack. Pull that back to clean out the flute so it actually wants to drill a little easier. Okay. So at this point, I don't know that I'm going to drill down that one. Well, you know what? I think I will try. And I'm going to use my thumb to just kind of hold that in place. I'm going to stop. That one's going to be a short one. but I don't want to drill through the side of the stock. This one's going to be a little trickier. So this crack here is part of this one here on the side. It doesn't come all the way up. This one up here is this one. And again, I don't know. And you can probably see that when I'm drilling, there's some oil soak stuff in here. So I'm going to try and do this on this one as well, holding my thumb in place, just to kind of help hold that down. Clean off the burned wood. All right, so this hole goes all the way through, full depth. So clear to there, right about where my thumb is. I can come around right there. Use a pencil. So that's as deep as that drill came down this crack. So if I come over here, make a note of it there, the reason for that is this crack continues way back to here. So back here, I'm going to drill up like so. So I'm going to drill up that crack from the bottom. And the reasoning's the same. I can force a toothpick up to squirt glue through that. This one I got to be a little more careful because I don't want to drill all the way through the top, and I don't want to drill through the side. And I'm going to stop at that point. So our focus, put my glasses back on, our focus is to repair the cracks. This is also going to be a bedding job as well. So normally I will repair the cracks first, and then I will worry about bedding the buttstock to the action. So I'm going to do a little bit of that together for you guys, but generally it's done in two steps. So repair the cracks, then move on to worry about bedding it to the gun. The reason I'm going to do it in two steps is I'm going to have glue on this, and I'm going to put this back together and wrap some surgical tubing around it to keep everything in place. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well have a little bit of glue in here to fill some of these gaps and holes for the bedding. And so I will do some of that, and then of course I'll have to, usually the 24-hour 2-ton epoxy runs a little bit. And so you don't get maybe you'll have little gaps in there, here and there, and I'll have to go back in and refill those. But this gets me started. So before I go any further, I use Brownell's Acro-Release aerosol. If you use something else, great, cool, knock yourself out. This stuff rocks. This is the stuff I use. I don't use anything else. I've tried all kinds of other stuff. This is the stuff I use. Normally I spray this outside, but we're going to do it right here just because. That's the tang screw. Then I'm going to want any of the metal here that might have glue on it. All right. Follow the instructions. If it says to do that outside, then do it outside where it's well ventilated. We're going to mix up the glue, get those toothpicks in here now. Mix it up wherever you want. The bottom of Coke cans are great. Works really good. If where you recycle, it goes by weight, more the better for you, right? A little bit of dried glue on the bottom adds a little bit of weight. They do it per can here where I live, so it doesn't matter how much the can weighs. I use actually it's a cap off of one of these. And you can see that over time it's been filled with mostly epoxy, but I'm sure there's some JB Weld and who knows whatever else in there. So mix that up, equal amounts. And you can use a toothpick or a piece of spring stock. I usually use a piece of spring stock, but since I'm going to be using these toothpicks to force the glue down those holes, I'll use one of them to mix it up. So before we get too carried away, I did forget to rough up the end of that stock. I was telling you guys I was going to do a little bit of bedding as well as repair the holes and the cracks with the dowels. So I'm going to want to rough up some of this area around here. Usually I use either a chisel or a burr, but the point on a drill works just as good. Just undercutting that lip. Give the glue a good place to purchase. Rough this up a little bit. Got those holes in there so it's not too bad. And I'm not going to worry about the rest. I'll do most of the rest of it later, at a later date. All right. Now you can use your toothpick to dab on the glue and force some glue down that hole. I like to use a piece of spring stock that I've got floating around. It's a little smaller in diameter to work some of that glue down in there. And I know in some of the videos you can see paper towels laying around in the background. Yeah, some of those have been laying here for a day or two. You know, you get oil and stuff on them. When you're wiping up glue, who cares? So old paper towels, that's one of the reasons. I mean, you might as well use them. You see the old Q-tips piled up there. I think we talked about that in a previous video. When I cold blue something, I usually only use one end of the Q-tip. Well, the other end ends up being used to dab up oil or whatever. It gets cruddy. But for wiping up glue from time to time, they're awesome. Bob used to give me a hard time. He's like, get rid of that. I don't want the cold blue stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you're just throwing away a Q-tip. We burned through 3 times as many Q-tips. I'm laying those there. The cold blue doesn't affect anything. So what? So it's one of those things, you know, you don't like something, so you're just like, eh. And he just didn't like it. It wasn't that he couldn't, there was no reason he didn't like it, other than he just didn't like it. So anyhow, that was Bob. So, and then be careful, your piece of metal, you're gonna drip glue everywhere. So once I've got a bit of glue inside that hole, I'm going to want to push this down, and you can feel once the glue's all the way at the bottom compressing, you can feel that toothpick compressing more of that glue. And you just keep going. Keep adding the glue. So like I was mentioning, when I'm doing something that's just busy work, I like to be talking so you guys get a little bit more information. Instead of, I can be totally quiet for the next 5 minutes while I do this, and you guys are just watching me do this. You can watch that and listen. So as you can see while I'm doing this, that I mentioned I'm gonna put this back on the gun and then wrap surgical tubing around it to hold everything in place, keep things tight. And I am. That's part of what I'm gonna do. But sometimes you don't need to, or the stock is for whatever reason, the gun's not gonna be on it. So at that time, a lot of times I'll just drive a toothpick in and then leave it sticking out. Trim it off tomorrow when everything's dry. You don't have to trim them. These I'm going to have to because they're going to go on the gun, and if they're too long, they'll interfere with the gun doing its job, or the stock going on the gun fully, I should say. So let's, oh yeah, oh, you could hear it oozing up around the toothpick. Where'd those paper towels go I was talking about? So at this point, I'm going to pull that back, clip it off, put that piece right there. I'm going to use a punch to push that in below flush. And I've actually used punches to drive those in from time to time. And it didn't hold hydraulic all the way through, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. All right. Compressed air works well too. If you've got compressed air, you can simply spread some of the glue along some of the cracks. I'm going to show you, I use my thumb and fingers to work it in through some of the cracks, like that. Sometimes you'll spread the crack with one finger while you press it in, or even take a Q-tip and force that glue down in there. Then I'll throw that Q-tip away. All right, moving on. There's that silence I was telling you guys about. You're just watching me do stuff instead of me trying to teach you something. I appreciate you guys watching these videos. I hear people like them, so that's cool. Hope they're helpful, enjoyable. What's nice, if you don't like it, you can just turn it off. All right. That one wasn't as deep. Longer punch for that one. All right, so now I'm gonna take some of that glue because it doesn't need to be there. The glue is actually starting to set up already. Not quite as runny, it's more getting more like molasses now, a little thicker. And then the other one that I wanted to do was here on the bottom. So by doing it this way, we're repairing the cracks. And we've all seen guns. I was talking about the bolt through the side earlier. We've seen that. We've seen even when they do it with a brass rod, you know, which is nice. They clean them up and, you know, but it's still obvious. This is going to be, you're not going to be able to see these. You're not going to know that they're there. Sorry, I'm not trying to hide anything. My hand is in the way. I'm just using it resting against the... And then sometimes you can just use it, pry it over on its side, and it'll just break right off. And there we go. All right, so this one I'm starting to get in a bit of a hurry because the glue is starting to set up a little quicker than I expected. Usually it doesn't set up this quick. And I can use Acro glass for bedding, and I do, or the steel bed stuff or things of that nature. But on something like this, I'll just use the leftover glue and get our, and then I use my finger to get the majority of it, like so. And then again, those paper towels. Clean that up so I'm not dripping glue all over my bench. Don't want glue on my bench. Acro release spray's been on there. I'm going to wipe off the glue off the outside. And obviously, when I slide it on, it's going to ooze out of here, there, and a couple other places. Now, I'm going to take one of my Q-tips and go down through this hole and try to make sure that there's not a lot of glue in there, down in the bottom threads, simply because I don't want glue in the threads of my screw. It's got release agent on it, but nonetheless, snug that up. All right, you can see how our glue oozed out here. And I talked how you don't want the tang touching because that acts as a wedge to split your stock. So after this sets up tomorrow, I'll come in, I'll relieve where the tang is touching that stock. I don't want it touching there. I want it touching up here. You can see how our glue is right there. Clean that up a little bit down here on the bottom, anywhere it might be. Not as much here. You can see how we got a chip actually missing there. We're not quite there. So I'll be filling those at a later date, like we mentioned. So I'm gonna, now what I want to do is keep this all tight. So I'm going to use surgical tubing. Get it wrapped around there. And now I can wrap that sucker. Ah! A lot of times when you do this, you're squeezing those cracks together, the glue will ooze out of them. So be aware you're going to be doing some more cleanup after it dries. All right. So where's that last wrap? I'm going to undo that a little bit. There we go. I don't see any glue oozing through too many of the cracks. Got a little bit of glue right there. So now let that set up. Break that screw out tomorrow morning. Pop the stock off. Clean up anything that's missing. Fill any holes that are there with glue. You know, make sure that things are as they ought to be. So one other thing I was going to show, since we're talking about guns and gun stock, excuse me, is, so here's one that you can see I got glue all over crap. What's going on? This was actually had a pretty good severe break in it. Clear up here. As a matter of fact, this was 2 pieces. It was that bad. So glued it back together. Obviously I haven't cleaned it up yet. The reason for that is, since it was 2 pieces, I want to try to make sure that the 2 pieces are going to stay together into 1 piece. So I glued it together, wrapped it with surgical tubing here and here, and then let it set up. Then I took and I grooved right in here and right here where the cracks are, and laid screws in there. Old screws, bent screws, nails that you cut notches in, or checker or whatever. By doing that, you lay those screws in there, the split, if it decides it wants to start to split, it's got to pull, the glue's in these threads, trying to pull both directions. That helps hold it in place. So I did that on the bottom, but I didn't on the top. Now I'm going to glass bed the gun as well. I mean, you're going to have to at this point. It's going to need to. So I've gouged everything out. This is where all the acrylic glass. I'm probably going to use steel bed on this because I want it to be super strong. In all in here, this is just rough. That's all going to be filled with glue. When the gun goes in, it'll ooze out all over, and that'll match the contour of the gun. You guys all know that. But what I did was I also notched back here, so we had a pretty good crack here, to where I can lay this little screw. So I thought I'd just kind of show that real quick. I thought I was going to have leftover glue from the 94, but I went ahead and used most of that, so we're going to just mix up some more. So in this case, I'm not using a toothpick to mix it up because I don't, there's no, you know, I'm not drilling holes for any toothpicks or any dowels. So I got the piece of spring stock here that I used for this. You can see that it's got glue dried on here on this end. I'll chisel it off later. But, so, get the glue all mixed up. All right, now, in some instances when I do this, this one is an extreme case. The gun was broken, the stock was broken in half. Sometimes you're just fixing a little crack. A lot of times though, I will color the glue. Got the black dye stuff. You can use soot from the propane torch or the oxyacetylene torch. They also have brown dye, and mix it up. Because it just looks, if they can see the screw in there, it doesn't look quite as well. You could kind of see it on these bottom ones. I don't know if you can see down into there. You can see some of those screws. I'm not too worried about those because, again, I'm going to glass bed over that, so you're not going to be able to see any of that. But for the video, if I can mix in some black dye to show you, why would I not do that? Okay. And then I just simply daub it in there and let gravity work for you. More is better. I like to have the screw that I'm using, or the nail or whatever. You can use a nail. It's got a head on one end. I like having something that's got serrations or threads like a screw, because then the glue's trying to, it'll enter those threads. And if the right side of the stock's trying to leave the left side, it's got to pull the glue out of those teeth or those threads. So I like to have something like that, and then I want whatever I'm using, the screw or the nail or whatever, and I keep jumping over what I'm finally trying to say. I've actually taken pieces of steel and run a checkering file on them, so there's like serrations in them. Anyhow, I want that screw completely submerged. I don't want half of it sticking out, because then you just don't get the full benefit of the strength. So the more of that I can use, the better. And usually I try to do glue and bedding right towards the end of the day, because then any glue you happen to get, and you will eventually, it'll drip on the counter, and you end up with it on the next 3 guns you work on. It's on your apron, it's on you. Whereas if I do this right before I go home, everything's dry. Maybe a hard spot on your carpet, but you can cut it out or whatever. All right, so back to what's important. Got that screw down in there. Make sure that the glue totally encases it. And I probably shouldn't use my tweezers, but it won't be the first time I've used them for that. I'm going to try and see if there's any more of this. Okay, now I just have to make sure that this stays like this so it dries right there. So what I will probably do, since we're getting ready to wrap up filming for the night, is I will put that in. I won't clamp it tight in my vise. It's loose in here. It just doesn't need to flop over. So that's 2 things, 2 stock repairs, 2 different things going on there. The doweling is something I use a lot. This I use a lot for length splits that I don't want coming apart. It's just more stuff. And it's not difficult. None of this is difficult to do. Sometimes it's messy, but it's not hard to do. So anyhow, I hope this was of some education, some help to you, or fun at least, if nothing else. All right, you got to watch Ken get glue all over his hands. All right, I'm gonna kick Robert in the butt and run him out of here. And we'll see you guys later. Have a good one.
If you want to learn real gunsmithing and see more videos like this, be sure and like and subscribe so you don't miss out. If you're interested in training to be a real gunsmith, go check out the AmericanGunsmithingInstitute.com. Or for your own firearms training, AmericanGunsmith.com.